What's up, everyone? You're now tuned in to About the People broadcast.
Our program will cover the historic findings of the Spirit of Mandela's campaign 2021 Tribunal on Human Rights, which rightfully indicted the United States of America on 5 counts of genocide. The charges were all related to the treatment of Black, Brown, and Indigenous people.
And they are health disparities, hyper-incarceration, environmental racism, political imprisonment, police violence, better known as slave patroller violence. In keeping with the verdict, ATP will carve space for revolutionaries, everyday people,
and especially Black, Brown, and Indigenous heads worldwide, to engage as openly as these screens will permit on how we conceive our collective self-determination. Our first episode features interviews with former political prisoner and revolutionary elder Jalil Muntaqim, the People's Liberation Program of Rochester, and current political prisoner Kwame Bean's Shakur. Stay tuned, and more importantly, connect with us to stop these genocides from building.
Jalil Muntaqim, 3 syllables. Muntaqim.
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 Thank you.
Yes.
I needed that.
You needed that?
Because I feel like I said Jalil and he says Jalil, so I'm just like, I kind of like that you say like that for some reason, but I just can't help the way I was told to pronounce words, so.
Okay.
You know.
you told how to pronounce words. What you mean in school?
No, actually, my mom was huge on words for whatever reason, so I think I developed that from her.
My mom was too.
Yeah. She was big.
She told me when I first got to prison, right? I was in, I think, Tracy correction facility, and she told me, she said, listen, you gonna be fighting these people, you better learn how to talk, right? She said, you gotta learn how to talk. She said, listen, this is what I want you to do. Go get your dictionary and read the dictionary, right? From cover to cover. And I had read that Malcolm X had did that.
Yeah.
Right? So I said, okay, I'm gonna do that. And then when I started doing it, I started writing letters, dictionary letters, dictionary words in these letters. I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. You know what I mean?
Well, that was
like
good.
that guy,
people who you was writing to, no?
You ever watched that? You ever saw that program called Living Colors?
Yeah.
And you know the guy they had in prison? The Living Colors? He used all the different words, all the big words. Yeah, that was me. That was me.
That's hilarious.
And actually really learn how to put a sentence syntax together, you know, and probably use these words what they actually really mean. But my mom was big on words, bigger for me to learn how to articulate.
Wise words.
Yeah, and use the dictionary.
I like
That's dope.
That is dope.
And I did see that, like, the way you grew up with really Black influenced parents, and that's not something that I was influenced in, and something that I'm really used to. And how does that actually, like, gear you towards life, right? Knowing that you're African and really knowing about liberation and really about movements. How do you grow up? Because I've read, right, that you was a part of the NAACP, and as well as Chairman Fred, and in the 60s, 70s, right now when we see NAACP, it's a bunch of, right? It's a bunch of bullshit going on.
Because you got Jesus Dukes down there. Jesus Dukes been down there for ages. Ages as head of NAACP. And she's part of the system. Exactly. Across the board, you know. She is part of the elite.
Yeah.
Like the bourgeois elite, Black bourgeois elite down there in New York City. Hazel Dukes. She's been there for ages, head of NAACP.
How was that transition?
How's the transition?
How old was you when you was a part of NAACP?
When I was part of I was a kid. I was in my teens. You know? My mom was a member of NAACP. Okay. So she used to take us out.
Trying to figure it out. We were trying to figure that out.
I was about to say, how did that work?
Yeah, my mom was a part of NAACP. Yeah. That's the only thing that was jumping during that time, in terms of the civil rights movement, So she used to take us out on marches and stuff like that for civil rights, and so that's what really piqued my interest in terms of knowing that. Well, that's one of the things, but that really piqued my interest that we have to be activists. We have to be engaged in what's going on in our communities. We live in a system. We live in a system, and this is the hard part, for us really to accept that we live in a system that's based upon white supremacy. And that's across the board. And it's been like that for the last 500 years.
No.
If you look at the history of the indigenous people of this country and how they've been slaughtered, right? The genocidal proportion by which they've been slaughtered, right? Who does that? Who goes into a country and massacre the inhabitants of that country? And what is the ideology? What is the politics believing they have the moral right to do so. You know, the moral right to do so.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And there has to be an aberrant. That's aberrant thinking, aberrant behavior. And the only thing that I can equate it to, based upon what we know today, is this idea of white supremacy. You know, that they are supreme to any other nation of color, of people, ethnic group on the planet. Where that comes from, you know? And we as a people, and not only here in the United States, but all around the world, have suffered as a result of this aberrant ideology, this aberrant philosophy. You know, and as I said many times on the podcast, you know, in the years I've been in prison and being in the belly of the beast, right? The belly of the beast, right? And looking at how they respond to us, right? Inside the prison system, either they're gonna break you or they're gonna make you, right? And more often than not, the individuals who I've come across with inside prison, if they're not actually taught to understand how the system works, they get broken. You know, and so that is a reality of understanding the seriousness of white supremacy. You know, I think even if you just look at, can we look at it in terms of what happened to Native Americans or the enslavement of African people, right? This idea, this aberrant thinking. But we have one part in history that we always hold on to as being an example of that. And that'd be Adolf Hitler, right? But Adolf Hitler was just a period of time, right? He killed 6 million Jews, but it's just in a period of time. We killed millions of people, hundreds of millions of people in the last 400 years, right? And every time there's dissent, every time there's a fight back, a resistance to that, they squash it, right? They squash it with deliberate barbarism, savagery. You know, anytime you can just, and that's what they don't teach in history. They don't teach that history in school.
At all.
You know,
At all.
You know, the idea of enslaving people, right? Splitting up families, killing babies, hanging people, torturing them, cutting off their genitals, and making souvenirs.
We was actually just talking about like the Black Jacobsons.
Yeah.
About that book, about when I speak to like a lot of my comrades from the neighborhoods, like the street gangbangers and stuff. That book is actually one of the first books I speak on because it does a lot of, it speaks on like ants eating on the face, attachment to the arms and the legs to different horses. It teaches like really vulgar. Yes, extremely, where in the system, like in the school system, public school system, we're not really being taught outside of just we were slaves, we picked cotton, and some of us worked inside the house. And I'm like, it's way more horrendous shit that we really went through, and y'all gotta understand that.
Just understand that there were hundreds of slave rebellions, plantations across this country during that period of time. They're not taught that. And so when, for instance, we talk about the issues of the tradition of black resistance, right? The chronology, what's the word I'm looking for? The legacy, right? Of black resistance in this country, we're not taught that. So that any time that anyone rises up, they look like a sore thumb, right? Rather than being part of a tradition of resistance against white supremacy in this country. All right, so for us, in regards to our capacity to resist, right? As an example, what's going on with me today, right? They're going to try to silence me.
And what is that?
Huh?
What is going on with you today?
Well, you know, I'm supposed to have a speaking engagement at Brockport College, SUNY Brockport College, and the Republicans and right-wing Republicans and police across the city of Rochester have been basically vilifying me in newspapers and trying to prevent me from giving a presentation at the college.
Ridiculous.
You know, they're trying to silence dissent.
Ridiculous.
That's important for them. Because to silence dissent is to up themselves, right? It's to big up themselves, you know, and saying that we still have control. You know, we still own this Negro. Right? We still own this slave.
Exactly.
You know, and he can continue to be a slave, right? In the capacity from which the system operates today. So, and so we have to figure out ways to have to continue to resist, right, and continue to empower our communities. You know, because they try to keep our communities disempowered, right, poor, moribund, and suffer from all kinds of life-threatening conditions.
Yeah.
You know, so even if you just take one little small part, right? White people live twice as long as black people. Just as one example, not even in par, right? White people live twice as long as black people and brown people. Why is that? What are the social economic conditions that permit? Yeah.
Capitalism.
Right. Well, we talk about capitalism. We say we can define it under the rubric of capitalism, right? But there is a deliberate, intentional policy, right, that serves their interests. Serves the interests of white supremacy.
Yeah,
right?
access.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Their reach is so much further than ours.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And so when we understand those dynamics from a historical point of view, right, we can see how we have to engage in the struggle or fight back in order to survive on whatever level that we possibly can to survive on. And therefore, we need to talk about these issues. And they try to prevent us from doing so. So that's what they're trying to do for me with going to Sony Brock.
They've been bothering you since you came home.
Well, yeah.
Right, exactly.
You got to
And
start
before
bringing
that,
people into
Yeah.
your basement.
I have not
Having meetings in your basement, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, well,
We got to get it out somehow.
absolutely. But yeah, since I've been out of prison, right? They have been on my case. They tried to put me back in prison 2 weeks after I was out.
Why is that?
Well, they said that I signed some papers to
vote.
To vote.
Impossible, right? Can you
Right.
believe that?
All right. They told me I signed some papers to vote, and I was ineligible to sign the paper to vote. So therefore, the Republicans, right wingers, right, decided, well, we need to make an example out of this guy, right, and have his parole revoked and sent back to prison.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
First person ever, was it prosecuted under that or
First person ever prosecuted for
registering to vote
for registering
Trying
to
to
vote.
vote.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
in New York State?
Ridiculous.
Yeah. First person.
Ridiculous.
So what did that tell you about the system? What did that tell you about my being able or not being able to make a presentation? You know, and they'll say, well, listen, you can't make a presentation. You're not eligible to make a presentation because you still killed 2 cops. That's the argument,
Yeah.
right? That you were convicted of killing 2 cops, so therefore you're gonna be silenced for the rest of your life, right? In fact, you shouldn't even be out here in free society. All right. But now this guy who just killed George Floyd, how much time you get?
Couple years.
6 years? 6 years, I think?
Yeah, some
Right.
change.
6 years, right? So we can see the inequitable method by which the criminal justice system operates, right? It operates differently for white people than it operates for black people.
For sure.
And if we just look at that alone as one example across the country or across the system, we find those kind of inequities, right? Where white people are given greater access, as the sister just said, in different methods or different ways of surviving in the social order that are denied black people, denied brown people, denied indigenous people.
And denied the white people they don't want to include.
And
The
denied,
minute they get
denied
closer,
some white people.
They move the line
Right.
even
If
further.
they're not adhering to the ideals of white supremacy, then they are also considered what?
One of us.
Yes, Negro lovers.
Yeah, Negro lovers,
Right.
exactly.
Negro
Yes.
Whatever that means.
You know,
That is
Whatever,
a phrase that has been leveled at me.
And if we really talking about it, everybody's a Negro.
What
Y'all love our culture.
What my buddy said? What do you say, man?
I've been called that before. That's a phrase that I've heard. It's dumb. It's a dumb phrase. Shouldn't be used.
No, it should not be used. You know why? Because we're all human beings on this planet.
Plus,
Exactly.
like,
And we're all going through the same processes of surviving on this planet.
Exactly.
Period.
Unfortunately, all right, white folks have been given this
Operating through
kind.
ignorance.
Yeah, it was ignorance. It's definitely ignorance. Racism in itself is ignorance.
Completely.
It's a construct, right? It's a human construct. Although, for those of us who are religious, particularly for those who are Muslims, in the Quran, it states that Allah or God made people into different tribes and nations, so that they get to know each other, right? And know each other, not have enmity or hatred towards each other. So it established that in that point of understanding our differences, if one is religious, then we know that God made people, different races, and so forth, right? That's deliberate of God, right? But He's testing us in terms of how we interact in our relationship with one another, okay? And for the most part, we are failing.
Yes.
We are failing miserably, right? If you look at the many deaths, right, unnecessary deaths that has gone on this planet, so to speak on these things, right, to share some ideas on these things, more often than not, particularly if you're going to talk about fighting back,
Yes.
right, for your own self-defense, then you'll become a pariah, right, in this society, right? You are to be made to feel less than, dehumanize, degrade, and diminish your value as a human being on this planet.
Yes, and that's why about the People podcast, we're gonna humanize the people, because that's what we're here for. We're here to actually show the people that our legends, our heroes, our icons are actually just human beings that be fed up, really just someone that's fed up with the system and want to fight back.
We were looking at the section about your sentencing statement, right?
Major.
Fully major, like that, and just trying to picture that, like being in that type of setting, dropping those kinds of statements, right? And the way that you end that, because I'm thinking back to, we're talking about the beast, you spoke of being inside the extra internal belly of the beast, inside of these prison plantations. And so the way that you end that statement, you say, all power to those willing to dismember the beast, right? Fire. I mean, just drop the mic right in front of the judge.
Yeah, it was.
Incredible closeout. And so I'm just wondering if you could speak to, like, if we could break down, what is this beast? Like, what does the beast entail? What are the characteristics of the beast? Who all encompasses the beast?
All right. First one, white supremacy. Second one, capitalism. Third one, imperialism. All right. Fourth one, colonialism. Fifth one, neo-colonialism. All right. Those five. Right. And if you can destroy either or all of those five, you have made a big dent in destroying the beast. Right. So for those of us who are engaged in that process, all power to you, people, to you. All power to you.
Love that.
Right.
Love that.
That's major. Did you I just learned about this quote when we was on our way up here, right? And I said, wow, that's major. Right? I wish I would have said some slick shit like that when I got sentenced. Right? I was just like, you got anything to say? And I'm like, no, get the hell out of here. Man. I'm ready to go through my time. Real talk, right? I wish did you think, like, because you get sentenced, right? So you either, was you coming from the street or was you already?
Listen,
when you said that
I was locked up August 28, 1971.
Did you plan that?
I did not see the streets again until October 6, 2020. Okay.
And that's a serious moment.
All right, 49 plus years in prison.
Did you plan that sentence statement?
I did.
Yes.
How did you come up with this?
I knew we were going to be sentenced, and I knew we were going to make a statement, all right, a sentencing statement. And so the day before, I sat in this cell with a pen and a piece of paper and began to write it out.
Yeah.
Began and just let what I know about our system and our situation is in this country. And I just laid it out that way. There's some parts in there that are missing pages, 2 missing pages.
Yeah, do you remember at all what that
I
was about?
I was dealing with the corporations, Coca-Cola, GM, IBM, and I was saying how they have impacted our planet, and how they are pervasive throughout the world, and what impact they have had on the planet, these corporations. And so that's the part that was taken out of out of it. But I cannot find those minutes.
Yeah.
You know, that page, those 2 pages that I talk about the corporations and what impact, deadly negative impact they have on the planet. Those
Bill
pages.
Gates had his people just go steal those pages.
I don't know if it was Bill Gates. I don't know who it might have been.
Yeah,
It might have been Purdue.
Yeah,
I don't know.
one of those corporates.
Chicken
They didn't want that bad press.
So anywho, that idea of dismembering the beast, because it is a beast.
Yeah,
right?
for
sure.
It is a beast, right? And it needs to be dismembered.
For sure.
Right? Dismembered,
Absolutely.
burned to the
Decapitated.
ashes, burned to the ashes, and thrown in the
Decapitated.
sea. You know, feed to the fishes. You know, so
How did that go over when you said that? Like, what was that scene like?
me personally, I stood up to make my
Yeah.
sensitive statement. I turned my back to the court,
Yeah.
and I just focused on the people in the audience.
Oh wow.
Right? So I turned my back. I'll talk to the people in the audience. I don't talk to the court.
Yeah. No. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I
Well,
get it.
stop for log.
F the court, right?
Yes, that's major.
I talk to the people. Say, listen, we're getting ready to get sentenced to life in prison, right? We understand the sacrifices that we made,
Yeah.
right? And this is the reason why. So that's what I try to explain to people. This is the reason why.
I do have for saying that we're about to be sentenced to life, and I have a big thing with mental health for people that was inside, right? People that was inside prison. How did that affect your psyche, knowing like this is it? I might not never see the streets ever again. I might not see my sister. I might not see my mom. I might not hug nobody ever again. Like, how does that play with your mental? And then doing all the damn time, as well as fighting, because we was both upstate in New York. I was in Easton. I think you was in Green Haven at the time. We was bouncing around. I'm like, damn, Jalil. At the time, you just regular Jalil. I'm like, this motherfucker.
Just the convict, huh?
I'm like, I said, yo, dang, this brother is still, right? He's still active, right? And that shit, I'm just like, dang, I'm 23, 24, you know how old you are. Yeah. And I'm like, yo, how is he still active? Like, he's not even trying. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, yo, he don't even give a damn. Like, as long as he's gonna educate the people and really help, I don't think the brother cared about getting the hell out of there. Like, and now I meet you, I'm like, oh no, hell yeah, you want to get out, right? Yeah, you want to get out. But you're not gonna stop fighting, right?
I knew that my getting out of penitentiary depended on me keep fighting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
If I just chill out and just did my time, they
Exactly.
got no problem keeping me there. None whatsoever.
And I tell
I'd be in
everyone
prison right now. Right? But because I raised my profile to the extent where I got a voice now, right? And I'm talking about them and this system, we gotta get this guy out of here.
yeah, please.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's the reason why they didn't want to take me back when they tried to put me back.
They don't want to take me back.
I don't want him back.
I said, no. Keep
That's
watching.
it now. Y'all got to handle it. You know what I mean?
What are you
Yeah. They didn't want me back.
That's
You know, so
hilarious.
that's it. No, you have to fight. You have to fight the way out.
Yeah.
And if these brothers were organizing inside prison, if they were organized today, as they should be, right? A lot more people be getting out of prison.
Yeah.
You know, we got to make it uncomfortable for them to keep us in prison. Just as our slave ancestors had to make it uncomfortable for them to keep slavery alive, right? Or chattel slavery alive, because slavery is still in existence, right? Just been penalized.
Why don't you all start off by telling us a little bit about People's Liberation Program and where it started, which I think is here, right? This very couch.
Yeah, pretty much on this couch. That's crazy.
Right. Jalil said right there too.
I'm in there.
My name is Oluwasegun Owoyele. I'm from Brooklyn, but I live in Rochester right now. I would say the People's Liberation Program started with Indy. All things like this always start with one person. And Indy, I would say, kind of have been thinking about this for like a few months now, or not a few months, like probably like the past year or so, because the organization started in Black August.
Oh, that's dope.
But and they kind of was thinking about it kind of the whole year and everything like that. And I think in like May, June, I went to California and then saw Neighbors programs and People's programs, decolonization for itself, and just kind of saw like a revolutionary new African organization working, and it wasn't like, you know, in Jalil's book or anything like that. It was like theory put into practice for them to actually see. So you can imagine how powerful that was. And then fast forward, I guess, 2-3 months later, into Black August. I think I hit you up during August too for like URAC, which is an abolitionist coalition that was on the U of R campus. But it's no more here no more. But from there, we kind of just started talking and really just thinking about what can we do in Rochester. And then we kind of met up with Jalil, and then Delancey and Abbas was here from the Hella Black podcast. Like that weekend, I think school started. So like school starting that weekend, Delancey and Abbas was here. I was meeting Jalil. I think Black August event was happening that weekend. Like so much was happening kind of in that one moment. Which is why I said lightning literally struck when when this organization kind of started, because it was literally like, you know, so much things. Like I was literally listening to Hella Black that whole year, getting radicalized by like niggas my age talking about fuck Obama and revolutionary politics and shit like that. So
how did y'all link with Brother Jalil? Because that's major.
That is major.
Yeah, so I can start. So when Jalil got released in October of 2020, I think I met Jalil the next night.
Major.
I think it was the second night you were out. We got invited over for dinner. That's right. Give me a nod or something.
A head nod or something. A thumbs up or something.
You got Jalil,
lifetime
okay, that's okay. You don't remember. That's fine.
Cool.
You tell the story.
I won't be here.
The first time we met was at Michael's house.
Michael's house. It was
Michael
like the second night you were out, Jalil. We had dinner.
Yeah.
What do you eat?
Dang, what do we eat?
I think I had.
You always eat good. You always eat good.
I think we had Chinese food.
Not that time, but
no. You know who cooked for you?
Mama Melanie. And who else?
Mary Adams.
Yeah, Mary Adams. That's right, Mary
That
Adams.
was the night she cooked dinner for all of us.
Yes, Mary Adams. That's a fact.
Just the names alone, that sounds like it was lit. Like,
it was good.
Like it was spread work.
It was spread.
It was, and it was a beautiful.
Like it was delicious. Just the names alone. Like, what was y'all eating? Like, I need to recreate that. Yeah.
But the minute like Jalil, we sat down for dinner, and I will say honestly, I had no idea. Like they were like, "You want to meet Jalil Muntaqim?" I was like,
wait a minute.
I googled Jalil Muntaqim, and I was like, okay, yeah. I had no idea, and then to be there, and then Jalil was like, so I have a book. It's out. We got physical copies in Buffalo. We got to get the physical copies. I'm trying to start a book club. We're gonna be reading.
Right to work.
First, right to work. He was like, I'm gonna have a book club. Yes. We got to get the books. We're gonna be reading.
2 days home.
We got the book. Yeah, we got the books like that same week. He was like, take a copy, start reading. I'm gonna get the book club going, but start reading. And I didn't start reading until a month after he gave it to me. So that was October. I started reading in November, and I kid you not, it changed my life.
As it should.
It changed my life. I was going around I was like, oh my goodness, nobody, like, I'm trying to talk to everybody
Nobody
about
knew none
it.
of this?
I'm like,
right?
do y'all read this? This is wild.
What's going on out here?
Do y'all see what they're saying? International law, we got the right to resist. This is wild. We gotta build these programs. I'm like, it was just so mind blowing. And at the same time, when I met Jalil, his cousin Abbas was also there. So I met Abbas, and he was like, I got a podcast called Hella Black. In November, I started listening to that too, and just being able to like Olu said, being radicalized through their podcast, reading the book, and be like, okay, I'm reading this book, and nobody around me talking about this, but I can listen to this podcast, and they talking that same revolutionary shit. Yeah. And like you said, people our age, and it was just so inspiring. And then in February of 2021, got to collaborate with Jalil on an event, brought him to the University of Rochester. Future
They
focus.
let him in? They let him in that time?
They let him in, no problem. We had no issues, no protests, no nothing. He did an event called Future Focus. We had, I think, 100, 200 people on Zoom.
That's amazing.
And Jalil was just preaching.
Yeah.
Was just
doing
preaching.
His thing.
Just doing his thing.
Yeah,
as
man.
he
Got
does.
words.
I was preaching.
I love that.
Yeah, he was talking that word, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And then just being able, I just credit to Jalil. Jalil just
I appreciate the ending, but it's not just me.
Nah.
Everybody came behind me. Came before me.
Yeah.
All right, it's our ancestors. We stand on the shoulders of giants.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do.
For sure.
Understand? See, that's the thing about about the system. It does not teach our true history, right? Because if we teach our true history, we'd be standing up with the kind of backbone that we need to have in order to resist, right? And so therefore, you know, they love breaking men, women, people, you know, and making them docile, making them passive, right? They expect us to suffer. Not only do they expect us to suffer, they expect us to endure in our suffering, right? And that says a lot in terms of this system and how it functions, and what they think about us as a people on this planet, you know. But yeah,
For sure.
they expect us to suffer
Disgusting.
and expect us to endure our suffering, not to resist, not to fight back, right? And that, for me, in my thinking, is against human nature,
Absolutely.
right? It's against human nature, not to resist and not to not be suffering, right? And we have been conditioned, right, in terms of the social dynamics of the social order. We've been conditioned, again, to suffer and endure our suffering. And my argument, particularly from our history and understanding my experiences in the Black Panther Party, right, that we can live better, and we should live. We deserve to live better.
Absolutely.
Right? But in order to do so, we have to fight back. Because there are a group of people in social order who do not believe that we should live well.
Yeah.
They don't believe it.
Yeah.
They don't believe that we are deserving of living well. In fact, they believe that we are less than. They believe that we are a subhuman species on the planet.
Yeah.
Right? And that in and of itself is incomprehensible in my thinking.
Right, because like, what the hell does that even mean?
Yeah.
And who defined that?
Yeah,
Like,
well-
who came up with that?
Well, they did. and
Like, what came, like,
okay,
I have so many questions about that.
Let's explore
I have
that.
so many questions
Yeah.
about
Let's explore
that.
that.
You got him to sit up.
Uh,
You're really getting into it.
Oh
now.
my
Yeah.
goodness.
no. But if you Google the papal bull
Yeah.
of 1347, something of that nature.
You're talking about the doctrine of discovery?
That, right. Doctrine of Discovery and the papal bull, whereas the Pope told the Christians to go out and conquer the heathens.
Yeah.
If you don't believe as we believe, then you are a heathen, right? And that set in motion the idea that some people are superior than other people.
And not to cut you off, but it also defined the concept of a nation as a Christian nation.
Absolutely.
Within that document. So whatever exists beyond that is not a nation and therefore doesn't exist and
Or
can be conquered.
Yeah, it can be conquered.
And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the judge, cited that in 2005 in a that's the law that we
Why you
live
didn't put
by.
no respect on Jorgen's name?
Yo,
I
never slept on him. I never slept on him. I never
But
slept on
there's
him. I knew he
a
was
there's a court case. It was actually a
Break it
local court
down.
case here
Break it down.
in the state. It was in Oneida. There was some indigenous people were trying to make a land claim, and the doctrine of discovery was used by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the most liberal judge in the history of the Supreme Court,
Sorry.
to basically continue the process of colonialism to steal land. But yeah, obviously.
Bro, that's
But
their hero.
that's the most liberal judge.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of indigenous people who have
My
talked
My
about
mind is
that
blown right now. That's
in the
crazy.
media and stuff, and it's very it's a very important contradiction to point out because of how much of an indictment that is on the entire system. That's the most
Absolutely.
liberal person you're ever going to put on the Supreme
I
Court.
remember indigenous folks talking about that after her death, and people talking about, oh, she's a feminist icon, she's this, she's
That's
that.
all I heard.
Oh,
She's
but
a colonizer.
she's a colonizer enforcing colonialism through the law. I'm like, this is ridiculous. But that's white feminism for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't gotta talk about that. So.
Man.
You call that white feminism?
Yeah, leave it at that. They care more about the looks of it, right? They care more about looks of it than
Cosmetic.
Yeah.
Cosmetic appearance of it, not the actual substantial means and methods from which they implement what they actually believe or
Exactly.
who they actually believe. That is a contradiction, no doubt about that.
If there's an actual belief there.
Yeah, that's right, if there's actual belief there.
So, brother Jalil, right to rewind a little bit. You want to go?
Let's
No.
You could go.
Let's
You
let's
could go.
let's explore.
go.
Yeah, these folks
I
are
think I
going.
wanted to go.
Yeah.
So loud.
These folks wanna go home.
The People's Liberation Program
I want them to
even
stay.
more.
Yes, let's go down the line. Let's go down the line.
Yeah,
So, y'all, I'm not gonna put my man Max on.
Nah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna put you on the spot.
Yeah,
I'll go
I'm-
first.
So what is People's Liberation Program?
Yeah,
Give
whatever
your
to
name.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So
All you.
I'm actually
Like, what y'all out there doing?
I'm in high school. I'm 17 years old.
Jesus.
We did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mad
So
respect.
amazing.
Very much respect.
Yeah. So the People's Liberation Program is kind of a spinoff of.
Let me cut you off real fast though, bro, because that's amazing that you're 17. I want to know why. How did you get installed? How did you get involved? That's amazing that you're 17 and you really involved, especially in this era.
Yeah, it started when I started Summer Leap. You know, I started working with kids. I really saw the
Summer Youth.
Yeah, Summer Youth. I saw educational injustices. I got in contact with Indy, met Indy.
Big
through
homie
there.
out
Hey.
Yeah, so that, and then going to 2020, me and Indy went to all the protests. You know, about a year later, I'm doing speak outs at Teen Empowerment. I'm coming, doing poetry, slam poetry, stuff like that.
You do poetry?
Oh, not like that, not like that. But
I can put you on the spot. I ain't gonna have you look into the camera. I'm not gonna have you look into the camera.
Yeah, but that kind of sparked my activism, and then in 2020 we got to meet Brother Jalil. Started organizing Black August with him and Indy. And yeah, we taken off ever since.
I thought it was really interesting the discussion we were having earlier about like when the Black Panthers had like the food programs, they call them survival programs, and you all are using the term decolonization program. I think.
Yeah.
Do you want to just talk about like some of that history? Obviously, I feel like this guy has something to do with that. But,
this guy, right? Whoever he is, whoever he is, this guy over here, right?
Brother Jalil Muntaqim.
Super important that people know how y'all started.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't take a scientist to be able to do it. Y'all put your hands together. So take your
what's
time.
Up with that? Like, what's up with survival program?
I want to know details.
And decolonization. What does that mean? Like, those are words that we hear a lot, but we don't always know the meaning of.
Yeah.
Jalil will talk about that a lot more, but it's kind of like a spinoff. It's putting more of an offensive type of language instead of kind of surviving. You know what I mean? We believe in the decolonization of our community, so we put those programs in place to combat capitalism. You know what I mean? We put grocery programs in place to combat the food inequality. You know what I mean? Because we believe food is a human right and everybody should be fed. You know what I mean? And then we're gonna get a health clinic and we'll be going to
right, exactly.
The whole thing. So,
I think it's also a part of recognizing that we are colonized people. So it's not. Survival programs do what they're supposed to do, but I think what Jalil did by recognizing and reframing them as decolonization program is recognize that as colonized people, we need to decolonize ourselves. And that process of decolonization comes with building these alternatives to the systems that are already here. So we are in the system that we are currently in this colonized nation that we're in. Food is not considered a human right. People are out here hungry. People don't have housing. So our work in building decolonization program is to build those alternatives. We're making sure that our people are fed.
Right.
So that's a mouthful.
So for the kids that's out there, right, the high school students, the college students, that really have no idea how to even start. Because we always say you got to just go out there and start the survival program. Are we getting government funds? Are we coming out of our pockets? Are we going on the corner? Do we get permits? Like, how does someone actually start a program?
That's a really good question. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, how did y'all do it? Like,
yeah. How do you actually go about it?
Like, how did you do that?
Yeah, I would say first out of the jump, we started out of our pockets.
Yes.
Yeah.
And no, but that's what the people need to hear though, because they
Yeah.
think we getting some fairy dust grants and stuff, and this is out of our pocket.
And that's real too, because when a lot of the first interactions we're having with the community, people think like, oh, y'all are a nonprofit, like, oh, you have a staff, oh, you have employees, like, thank your staff for me for this program.
Look at our staff.
And it's like we'd be trying to tell them like it's six of us.
us.
There are only 6 of us in People Liberation Program. We feed 80 families every other week. There are 6 of us. There are 6 of us. We started out of pocket, but it's the community that feeds into us. It's donations from the community. It's connections with these different community orgs that are able to have community partnerships so that we can get food to give our families. So out of that, we started out of pocket, but it really is just going out and talking to people. Like, we just went. We got together, we decided what we were going to do, and we just went knocking on doors.
Learn about the people.
Hey, how are you? My name is Indy. We were People's Liberation Program. This is what we hope to do, and this is what we believe in. This is what we can do in this community.
And what do you need?
What do you need?
And we did that with confidence too, because if you go to people genuinely wanting to help them and like expressing that to them, like, people are going to open up and like accept you and want to support you. And that's what we experienced. That's huge.
And one of the...
Who are you?
Yeah.
You didn't hear your name yet.
Hey,
Spotlight. There she go.
My name is Asia Berry. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and
come on, y'all gonna stop doing that to me.
Yeah,
y'all gonna stop doing that.
Tell him to relax. Because it's still part of the city. It's a borough. It's a borough. It's okay. Don't let him do that. Don't let him do that.
The Republic of Brooklyn.
I'm about to say, Tad represents the Republic of Brooklyn all the
always
time.
says that.
So
People's Republic.
y'all are not alone.
People's Republic of Brooklyn. Yeah.
That's dope.
I don't know what else to say. I'm a student right now, in my senior year, about to go into a 5th year studying
What school
a
you go
different
to?
subject, the University of Manchester.
And happy born day.
We have ruined your birthday?
No, this is like cherry on top. I would have been doing nothing right now.
This is dope.
Yeah.
What about this question of colonialism? Like, do you all find that your peers, your colleagues, the community that you're connecting with, do they see this as an internal colony? Do they are like in dialogue? Like, how is the question of neo-colonialism or internal colonies, like, is that consciously being felt, or like how do heads relate to this question of colonialism here in the States?
That's a really good question.
I could take a stab at it. Yeah.
I can too, though.
Alright, bet. I would say that with community members, I'm thinking back to my family as well. The reactions that, or like what I hear is like, when I explain that to them, they feel it. Mm-hmm. They might not have the same language. They might not say, yeah, we're a colony, or they might not say colonialism. But when you explain that black people are, this is the term I feel like most people are comfortable with, but second-class citizens. We're not in the same class. They know that. That's something my grandma has been telling me. We don't have the same rights as white people in this country. And I can add that language of, yes, because we are a colonized nation within this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We are a colonized nation on this land.
That's fire.
We are not citizens. We're not citizens of this land. I think Malcolm. I don't want to misquote Malcolm. Not that I said it, but Malcolm said it. He said that the laws for human. Yeah, I'm gonna paraphrase. But the laws are already in place in this country for us to have human rights. Mm-hmm. They're already written there. If we were considered, when they wrote that in the Constitution, if we were considered humans, then the laws are already there for us to be considered equal. But this wasn't written for us. It was written for the white people that this country, that's the country that they created for them. It's not for us. We are the colonized people within this country. So I feel like when we're talking, when I'm talking to community members, they know that. They feel that. Whether or not they have the language for it is another thing, but we all know it. They experience it, yeah.
Yeah, you don't got to know the language. It's just everyday life. Mm-hmm. You know, that's that everyday struggle. It's that everyday feel of slavery. Like,
it's
we're
the
just
symptoms of
walking around with
colonialism,
chains on our feet, although we're free. Like,
exactly.
No, we not. Like, we still... No, we're not.
Like, they know what, like, our community knows what occupation feels like, whether or not we use that word. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because they know what it's like when the police are constantly surveilling their neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my mom got pulled over today. Real life shit. So
she got pulled over today?
Mm-hmm.
She good?
She was driving out from New York City.
Ridiculous.
They said she was speeding, but yeah.
So our grocery program started, so we first identified the problem that we were seeing. Like, we know that food is a human right. Mm-hmm. Groceries are expensive. It's like become a burden. Like, food is a human right. We need food to literally like survive. But we recognize that it's become a burden, and like part of decolonization is relieving those burdens from people that's unnecessary. Mm-hmm. So since most of us were centered at the U of R, we identified a neighborhood that was right next to it, right next to one of the dorm places. So we started there. We decided that we wanted to start off there. And then we introduced ourselves to that community by doing like school supply drives, because it was in August. So we did a school supply drive to introduce ourselves, and then also at that event, we signed people up for our grocery program. So having school supplies first, because I think we learned from other people, like, you can't just come to people and say that you're going to do something. You have to like actually prove to them that you're going to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we showed up with something materially for them to grab onto as an introduction to us. And then we signed them up for the grocery program as well simultaneously. So then I think 1 or 2 weeks after that is when we did our first round of grocery program.
What was the turnout?
How many families?
We served 24 families on our first.
Yeah, just in that one neighborhood.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And what's wild about it is we started in that one neighborhood and we did the school supply drive like Asia's talking about, and then our next first program was 2 weeks from that. But from the people that we had signed up, we had got signups outside of that neighborhood from word of mouth. So folks living there calling family like, hey, can I get my sister signed up? She doesn't live over here, but she could use some groceries too. So that was like what was most powerful, because I think we had maybe 15, almost 20 signups in that neighborhood, but the rest were outside. So we weren't even ready to expand outside of that neighborhood yet. We thought we were just gonna do this little housing complex, but the need was there.
One of the things that we have been doing, or they have been doing in terms of the food program, is to ensure that there's flyers put into each bag. Each bag, they present flyers that explain what the program is about, or share some other information, so that you are also educating the people who are receiving this food. And what we try to impress upon people: this is not charity. This is a service. Right? This is serving the people.
That's big.
Okay.
I like how you put that.
That's very important.
Anyone, right? Why is that major, right? Because I hear that a lot. This is not charity. This is not charity. Why is that so major? Because I'm with the same thing. Not all of us, right? But for the people, right? Because this is about the people. This is about the people podcast. Why is that so important to distinguish charity and serviceable work? Really, I was just really out there doing work for the people. Why is that such of a difference and really major to put out there?
Yeah, the simple answer is we have ideology behind it. We have direction. You know what I mean? So
nice word.
I mean, you can.
Okay, yeah. Got the fire of fans. Boom. Pass it on. There you go.
There you go. The ideology point a little bit. Just because. And Delancey and Abbas talked about this on Hella Back too, about how like decolonization programs kind of move from charity, because people who do charity, they're from well-off positions most times, right? And you're already in that class structure. I mean, above the certain people that you kind of do in charity for. So it's feel-good work at that point, right? You're not really doing nothing to really move those group of people that you're serving to really seize the means of productions one day. You just trying to give them food today because they're hungry, right? But the root of the problem is that they don't have the means of productions to be able to reorganize their labor to service the needs of their very community. And that's the difference between charity and decolonization programs, because you're trying to move the people towards a position where they will be able to use their everyday labor to directly benefit their own community. And that's what we're trying to do here with kind of just people in Rochester taking care of Rochester people.
That's deep. And that was a perfect answer.
Because when you begin to empower people, they become less dependent on others, less dependent on a government that is actually oppressing them. All right? And so for us, is raising their level of consciousness, the understanding of their relationship, as you say, power dynamics, their relationship to social order, the relationship to government, the relationship to the corporate entities that runs society at large, right? And so if they understand those relationships, then they know they have a better understanding of what they need to do to empower themselves, to become free of those kind of dependencies, right? We have been taught to be dependent upon a system that doesn't like you, that don't care nothing really about you, right? And so that is part of the process of decolonization, right? We're decolonizing our minds, our thinking, right? I did a podcast on Hella Black, right? And the title of the podcast was "Free Your Mind and Your Ass Will Follow." All right? And it was important about that. It was important about that because how you think is the determining factor of what you do. Right? If you think like a slave, you will continue to act like a slave. If you think like a criminal, you'll do criminal behavior. Right? But if you think like a revolutionary, or you think like a free person, right? A free person, you can do for self. Right? And you can do for your community. Right? That's what free people do. Right? And unfortunately, for us, we have been taught, right? We've been conditioned to be slaves, right? To not be free people. Okay. And I'm often mentioning the movie TV series called Roots. Right? Some of you are old enough to have watched that. Some of you have seen it You know.
I know about it.
Okay, and replay. Right?
No, they wasn't gonna watch it.
Yeah, but they have one character in there named Chicken George. Right, I'll never forget this.
Chicken George.
Yeah, it had such an impression upon me when I saw this movie. I saw this series on TV by it was
Alex Haley.
Alex Haley, right? Exactly. Alex Haley, the same guy who did autobiography for Malcolm X. And so, after the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment, the slaves, right, Africans in this country were free, or freed. And Chicken George says, right, and that's what caught me. It took me out of because I was laying in my bunk in the cell, watching it on TV. It took me out of my bunk, right? He said, I don't know how to be free. Right? I don't know how to be free. He had been so conditioned to be a slave. He know nothing else.
Wow.
Right? And that is part of the problem, one of the major problem that we have as a people, black people in this country. We don't know how to be free.
Wow.
Because we've been conditioned to be dependent upon a system that does not care anything about you.
Yeah.
And then we keep begging the system to care about us. Rather than finding our own wherewithal, our own internal strength to take care of our own business, to take care of ourselves. You know, we don't know how to be free. And that's the reason why decolonization is important. Right? Decolonization in the deliberate, intentional methodology, right, of decolonizing ourselves and our thinking of being slaves, right? And to begin the process of our thinking of being a free people, being a liberated people, right? And that's the reason when the book was written, the title of that book was written. We are our own liberators, right? In that way, we're not dependent upon anybody else. They can free us. We have to do the work ourselves, right? We have to become our own liberators, right? Otherwise, we'll continue to be Chicken George.
Pull up on us. We're People's Liberation Program. We are in Rochester, New York. We're on Instagram at PLP Rochester. We're on Facebook at People's Liberation Program. And if you black, if you African, you pull up on us.
Peace and blessings and free to land. Another segment. We're gonna get straight into this. What happened at Rockport?
The college hosted Jalil Muntaqim as a speaker, drawing strong reactions from people on both sides of the issue.
In March, I came up with a thought of bringing Brother Jalil to SUNY Brockport, as an educational guest speaker. And him and I had talked in 2021, I think it was the fall, about him coming. It was some kind of like diversity grant, it's called PED grant. And did the application, got the support from my colleagues in the department. Everybody was on board, and so I submitted it. It was accepted. They was even congratulating me for bringing them. And then like a week, I don't even want to say a week, it might have been like 2 or 3 days after I got that, Brother Jalil was the first one to reach out to me. Like, have you heard about the grant being canceled? And then I think this is a diversity officer person talking about they're not going to get a grant for some just contrary, like ambiguous reason. I even asked for more details, no response. So in that moment, that's when I knew there was a form of repression going on. And then it was just a chain of stuff where, like I said to y'all, the hate mail just start pouring in. I can't even count the amount. At some point, man, they tried to get me to come to a meeting, and I was like, nah, I ain't going to that meeting alone, because it was already students, other people who was already helping to organize, and I knew, I had a feeling they was on that tip of repression. And before the meeting happened, let me go back. Before they canceled the grant, they asked me to come to a meeting and tried to act like they was going to be supportive of the event. We're going to promote it. We're going to make sure everything goes well. And that's when they put it on the website that he was coming. And then so after that, that's when the grant was canceled. They sort of tried to take it over in order to do what they wanted to do with it, to start their steps of repression.
Exactly.
And so just to fast forward, they tried to get me to come to that meeting. I'm like, no, we're organizing as a coalition. I'm not going to that. And they tried like 2 or 3 times, and by the last time, man, my dean was trying to like force me to come to a meeting that I had already said, hey, I'm not coming to the meeting without the coalition. But as a result of that, man, the same day, the president put out a news blast that the event was going online.
Yeah.
So from there, me and the students, I reached out to Brother Jalil. And I was just, at that point, I was asking him, like, man, how do you feel even about doing it? I was apologetic and like, damn, I didn't realize all this was going on. So
how you felt, bro? About like, everything that was going on?
I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go. They're gonna have a parade of cops, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I'm coming.
For sure.
I got a First Amendment right to make my presentation. They're gonna prevent me from having my First Amendment right. Then that's what they're gonna have to do.
Exactly.
They're gonna have to make it public. That they are violating the First Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Exactly.
By use of their own preconceived ideas of what they think I'm going to talk about, or whatever it is.
Like who you are.
Oh, just matter who I am. A black man who speaks the truth.
Exactly.
Or at least try to speak the truth.
Yeah.
And if that's the problem with them, then they got a problem. Because they're not going to be able to take the words out of my mouth and twist it and turn it and with my consent. That's not going to happen. So I was concerned about him and his position and so forth. But he asked me, he said, how you feel about it? I said, well, let's go. Whatever.
Yeah. So after they forced it online, we were going to decide, like, okay, should we just organize it and still, just do it anyway?
Guerrilla stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then Jalil had reminded me of who we're dealing with, the enemy that we're dealing with, in which they're going to try to create a situation where they now feel like they had the authority to be violent and to bring force and pain and suffering to all of us. So as he mentioned, getting out the message, became more important than forcing a situation on campus. And so canceled the auditorium, canceled the food orders. And so myself and some of the student coalition, we was able to meet and touch base with Jalil, and then we decided to do a sit-in. We did a sit-in just to express our discontentment. Yeah, we wanted the whole campus, everybody, to know that we was being forced to do it that way. And so during this period, man, I forgot to mention, they were portraying to the public that due to some safety concerns, quote unquote, that this was the reason they was doing it online. This is what they was telling everybody, right? So the event did happen, but one thing I want to make sure we bring to the forefront, a journal called Fire was investigating the whole situation throughout. What I wanted to say about this Fire article, man, they came out by the end of it. One, they violated my rights by lying about any safety concerns. Zero evidence to support any safety concerns. Zero.
They never have evidence for stuff
Zero,
like that.
man. And so
this is the idea they thought there.
It really showed the hypocrisy. I think the hypocrisy that exists at that college, and these places got to practice what they preach. So.
Yeah, Sony brought forth. We have to do better. And
one thing I just want to add to this.
You got to find a word. So.
Yeah, a group of young students from Rochester. They supported us as much as the Brockport students who supported us. Had a big demonstration too in front of Brockport, with both sides in the streets. Those who opposed my being there, those who support my being there in front of Brockport. But the Rochester students, an organization called a Progressive Liberation Program, they was able to manage to have this venue at Rochester University of Rochester, and they assisted with some of the technical techniques, technical issues, and getting the Zoom put together. And he said our people in the background, and so by virtue of that and the whole hoopla behind this, we had 400 people online, and still had 50 people in the audience.
Yeah, so can you imagine how many people would have shown up?
Yeah.
So
a lot of us don't know how to work Zoom and stuff.
You're right. Yeah. So as a result, I think, be honest with you, I think we had more people as a result of the hoopla than we would have had if they had just been quiet.
Yeah, they brought attention to it.
Yeah, they brought attention to it,
so
right?
Let's see what he got to talk about.
Yeah, and so the media was all on it. I had about, I think, 3 or 4 different media.
Yeah, you almost went viral.
Wanted me to make a statement in regards to the repression, and I wouldn't give them that. I wouldn't give them that to play because I know they take my words and twist it and turn it and flip it. Right. So I wasn't give them the opportunity to do that.
As you should.
The same. And I just allowed the program itself to come and be what it was, and it was recorded someplace, right?
Yeah, it's online.
People can find it online now.
Yeah, and this right here is gonna go out, and we're gonna keep pushing the word. And I appreciate you as always, brother Jalil Muntaqim, brother Raphael. We appreciate y'all for helping us and about the people. We're gonna keep fighting for the people.
That's fact.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
All power to the people.
Yes, sir.
To the people.
What's the call?
Free them all.
What's the call?
Free them all.
What's the call?
Free them all.
A lot of our focus lately with Brother Jalil has been on the term genocide and the meaning of that term in the context of modern American society, or so-called American society. So if you just wanted to give you the opportunity to just help us sort of demystify the term genocide, and people normally associate it with Hitler or something, but what's your take on it? And I know you mentioned birth certificates the last time we spoke as like part of like an initiation into the genocidal system that we live in.
Yeah, so what we want to do right now is get people away from that narrow vision or identification of what genocide is. And like you said, people, when they think of genocide, they think of it has to be a whole group or a whole individual group of people being wiped out at one time. When that's not the case. You know what I'm saying? And so with us over here as New Africans being held as a neo-colony on this land, the first form of genocide before any of the other forms that we acknowledge take place is the birth certificate. As soon as we come out of the womb, they're forcing us into a binding contract with the United States Empire through the Department of Commerce. And so those Social Security numbers and those birth certificates are a form of colonization. They're denying us our right to self-determination, to have control over our own lives and destiny, and be a sovereign group of people, right? And when you go back and you look at our anti-colonial struggles during the 60s, 70s, and 80s when the Republic of New Africa, the Black Panther Party, and the Black Liberation Army were engaging in these national liberation struggles against the colonial government. That in itself is a form of genocide, and they then attempted to repress us, you know what I'm saying, and deny us, you know what I'm saying, that progress for self-determination. And we have to also, when we're talking about genocide, we have to point out international law, because a lot of people over here are still focusing on civil rights that are being granted to us by the colonial oppressor government. And the United Nations Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and People states the inherent right of colonial people to struggle by all means at their disposal against colonial powers to suppress their aspirations for freedom and independence. And at the same time, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights says that all people have the right of self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. And so, any time that they're stopping us from achieving that goal, that's genocide. Right? Like, we have to make sure that people understand that genocide can occur without the actual killing of members of the group. Right? Like anything that causes serious bodily or mental harm on that group of people is genocide.
So basically, like, one of the things that's connected to what you're just talking about is like this quote from the FBI on March 9th, 1968 that says, quote, "Negro youths and moderates must be made to understand that if they succumb to revolutionary teachings, they will be dead revolutionaries." I was curious what, as a political prisoner yourself, and you're very much aware of the rights of political prisoners, could you speak a little bit about what some of those rights are, given these genocidal conditions that you're obviously living under?
Yeah, so as I mentioned on that last question, any group of people that feels they're being oppressed, or they're being colonized, or they're under conditions of genocide, they have the right as a people to wage a liberation struggle and fight for self-determination and self-government. And so also our rights through international law, our international human rights states that if during that course of national liberation struggle, the colonial oppressors engage in forms of colonial violence against us, as the FBI and COINTELPRO did during the 60s and 70s, the high tide of our struggle, through assassination and framing and holding our political freedom fighters captive, it says that we also have the right by any means, including armed struggle, to defend ourselves. And in the course of capture, these people are supposed to be treated as political prisoners and freedom fighters, not charged as criminals. And that's what they've done with Dr. Matubu, with Mumia, all these individuals, you know what I'm saying? And then we still have people that are living in exile right now in other countries because we know that if they're captured, they're going to be treated as terrorists and criminalized. And so, when you look at right now, like just me, myself, as a political prisoner, I've been in solitary confinement for 6 years because of my organizing and educating around the nation and inside of these camps. So I can only imagine what our elders that's been held in solitary confinement or in these slave camps longer than I've been alive are going through.
Yeah, and also the last time that we spoke, you mentioned what you learned from your corrections, like Department of Corrections file, about how they perceive you as a high-ranking member of the Black Panther Party. Would you like to just explain that and what it means in the context of what we're talking about?
Yeah, so I got this information from a higher official in the DOC administration that had worked back here a few years back. And when you ask to see your confidential file or your prison file, there's two different ones. There's one that you can't see. And I asked them what's in that file is allowing them to keep transferring me to 3 prisons in less than 2 months, having me held with no visits and no phone, basically taken out of the system. They're like, well, I can't give it to you, but I can tell you that it says that you're a high-ranking Black Panther Party member and that you have the ability to mass organize people quickly on social media. So when I first heard this, according to the time, I'm 28 years old. So of course I'm not a member of the Black Panther Party. Even members of the Black Panther Party back in the day don't identify as Black Panther members. So I was just in my mind, I'm thinking that, you know what I'm saying, these European prison bureaucrats are ignorant. They're just thinking that anybody who's saying that they're a new African revolutionary is a Black Panther. But then my co-founder of the NALC, Shakur, who's in domestic exile right now, they transferred him. He's doing state time, and they still sent him down to Virginia. And so through his lawsuit against this prison here in the SHU, he was able to obtain his confidential file, and it also has him labeled as a Black Panther member. And that's when the alarm bell started going off. The Black Panthers are one of the only African organizations in this country that have been deemed domestic terrorists. And so they have to have that on our jacket for a reason, because it allows them to do certain things to us, or in the future take certain measures against us that they couldn't do if we didn't have that on our jacket deemed as domestic terrorists. And so if it's happening to me and Shanti, we gotta wonder and question how many other people around the country this is happening to. What does that really mean?
So I wanted to just briefly ask you about Brother Jalil and Brother Jalil's contributions to like the Black radical tradition and to abolitionism in general, and just sort of I was curious, like you mentioned, like some of Brother Jalil's like specific theories of social change earlier in this discussion. And I was just curious, like, what you think, firstly, like, what is the significance of Brother Jalil's, like, release from prison or his ability to be home? And what do you think, like, what do you think is important for us to learn from that particular comrade in this particular moment in time?
Yeah, well, first, the significance of him coming home, it set a tone for the rest of our elders to now come home, because, as you know, Jalil has been denied parole time and time again, and they kept stating the nature of the crime. You know what I'm saying? That's never going to change, whether it's 10 years or 110 years later. The fact of the matter is that's always going to remain the same. And if the court chose to give him a sentence of life with the possibility of parole, so luckily a judge stepped in and acknowledged that and was like, you can't keep denying this man parole based on the nature of his crime. So if y'all want to do that, then you should have gave him life without parole. And so we see this now happen with Brother Colonies and others like that who have been being denied parole, and now the judges are stepping in. So we hopefully that just paved the way and, you know what I'm saying, opens up the door for a lot of the other elders. But as for the significance of him being out and his ability to now tangibly apply his theory and his teaching into a method to establish infrastructure for our nation, you know what I'm saying, it's a story. Because I always say that people of my generation and your generation, we weren't around for the Panthers. You know what I'm saying? We weren't around. We never had a Martin or a Malcolm or any of those type of people to lead as an example. And Jalil is our Malcolm X. He is our George Jackson. And the foundation that he's laid down, for me personally, my own opinion, through Clothing is the most concrete, realistic approach for new Africans in North America in 2022 to achieve their liberation if it's applied properly. You know what I'm saying? Through Clothing it's the front field liberation of the new African nation. We operate on a three-phase theory of class struggle for national unity for self-government for national independence. And the reason that's so critical is that you have a lot of organizations who they study Marxism, they studied Lenin, they studied Mao, they studied these other revolutions in Africa or in Cuba, and they start these organizations here in North America not understanding the dialectical relationship and trying to already form their struggle as if we're just going to overthrow capitalism tomorrow, we're just going to achieve national independence tomorrow. And what Jalil has laid out for us through this method of the three-phase theory is how to start at phase one and develop our cadre, because without cadre we can't implement these programs for decolonization. Without the programs for decolonization, there is no self-government or infrastructure for us to move forward internally.
Yeah, and that's a really awesome answer. I'm so glad that you have the ability to talk to him, like whenever, like that's just such a cool thing. The other day when we were able to see you actually communicating with him was really cool. And so I was just curious in the end, like I wanted to ask you about if you just wanted to explain how like some of the current like political projects that you're working on are connected to like this reality of genocide, and also if you there's ways that you think people out here in the so-called free world or minimum security or so out here, do you want to, like, is there specific things that you want to ask for people to plug into or to show up to? I just wanted to give you some space here in the last 2 minutes.
Yeah. So applying that same theory and blueprint that we get from Proline, I take that and apply it to the prison movement, and we established the Prison Lives Matter campaign. And in 2018, we turned the structure that we had into the Prison Life Matter National Coordinating Committee, which is made up of a majority of the nation's leading political prisoners, POWs, and outside prison abolition organizations. And recently, in the past year and a half, we've turned that NCC into a regional organizing committee because we look at it like we're so fragmented as a movement and a nation. We're all spread out across the nation, this empire, fighting the same enemy, but yet we're so isolated. And I always say that if the forces and the colonial government, whether it's the smallest little town or the biggest city, that Republican mayor, that Republican governor in New York, or a small town with a population of a couple hundred, they're connected. You know what I'm saying? They're monolithic. Same thing as their pig forces. You know what I'm saying? The state, local, and federal authorities all connect together. And if they want, our revolutionary forces would have long toppled them. And so we got to take that same application and unify it as a people. You know what I'm saying? And so that way, when we organize, it's not just once a year for the prison movement. When we're operating on this regional structure, we're able to connect more and, you know what I'm saying, apply that cadre development and training.
Yeah, no doubt. So I guess we have not much time left. If there's anything that you want to say before it cuts you out, please do. I know it's going to do that very soon.
Yeah. We can encourage the people to go to our website at newafricanliberation.org, and they can contribute to the land fund for the New African People Center. It will help these decolonization programs for Colonies. Also, support prisonlives.org website, Prison Life Matter. We appreciate any donations and contributions.
Anybody who will take a stand against oppression has to be considered a warrior.
In those times, it was a time when yesterday's dreams were preferred, a period where personal sacrifices were not abandoned, but were regarded as doing one's part. It was a time when young women and men had faith and sought to realize their truths for the future. They knew it was not a matter of peace while at war, but rather peace after the revolution. They understood Jimi Hendrix's Purple Haze was a diversion where memory of being a slave is washed away in acid, tripping down the steep abyss of conformity to a racist oppression. It was a time when the target oink in the masquerade of law and order, but the only order it knew was to ensure corporate supply and demand continued to exploit the community. In those times, young black men and women matriculated in the lessons of street warfare, in the art of survival while building survival programs, fighting battles wearing the uniforms of the black leather jackets and berets. Their slogans were power to the people and black power to black people. Yet they knew the revolution would not be televised except for when one of them was murdered or captured or ran into exile. COINTELPRO would permit that broadcast in order to distort the reality of the revolution. It was time when black love reigned supreme and the babies were held in esteem. Make babies for the revolution before I die was the war cry, and all caught the infectious dream that if you believe it, then you should be it and live it or let it be. And we believed it, we lived it, and what we let be had no relevance in those times. The question is, how do I feel about the International Tribunal and why did we bring it up? First of all, I think it's important for us to take a position that we're here at Frederick Douglass' gravesite because Frederick Douglass represents resistance. Resistance against slavery, resistance against oppression, resistance against racism, resistance against white supremacy. And so when we understand that and we know the continuity of that struggle, then why not go to the international community? One reason why is because we was instructed to do so by El-Haj Malik Shabazz, right? Malcolm X told us that we need to take our struggle out of the domestic confines of the United States, the domestic jurisdiction of the United States, and bring it into the international community. right? He said that we need to move our struggle out of the issues of civil rights into the issues of human rights. And therefore, you have to bring it to the international community. And so when I brought forth the idea that we need to bring the international jurors back to the United States, my comrades of Jericho and other organizations decided that we would expand the idea that I originally proposed and to also include the question of genocide. Why is it important? Because the year that we was bringing this matter to fruition represented the 70th year from which the great Paul Robeson, William Patterson, and W.D. Du Bois have brought the first charge of genocide against the United States to the United Nations, right? And their efforts to do so, they were harassed viciously by the FBI, the progeny of COINTELPRO, right? The efforts from which the United States and use their law enforcement agencies to restrict and deny that there are human rights violations within the United States. And so it was important for us to bring those charges, those 5 charges that we brought to the United Nations or to the international community, so they understand that our struggle continues. Right? It continues both on a domestic level, and we're going to bring it into the international level based upon the instructions of El Hajj Malik Shabazz or Malcolm X. It's important that we do so that we can begin the processes of ridding ourselves, right, divorcing ourselves from a system of white supremacy.
And so staying with this link around our ancestors, this long generational, intergenerational history of resistance, we also know that that initial We Charge Genocide petition occurred very close to your own birth, yes? And so can you break down a bit to us the importance for you of coming up in an environment and having an upbringing where that Africanist presence and the reality of our long ongoing ancestral relationship with resistance, how that all, the role in that in forming your outlook and who you are today, especially given the onslaught that's going on as regards the children and the real history of this country.
Right. That's a broad question. Let me begin by just giving you some general history of myself and my own evolving as an activist, revolutionary. I do identify myself as a revolutionary. My mother just passed away last week, and she was the one who actually gave me the foundation for who I am today. We was raised with the understanding that we are African. My mom was a student of African dance as a young woman, and so when she brought that to myself and my sister as a young child, teaching us African dance, and that she was taught by her teacher that we are of African descent, we're African people. And so that's how I was raised in my own understanding, my own self-identity, right, that I'm of African descent. And so with that understanding, I looked at the world, I looked at society which I was raised in, and see there were contradictions between Africans, those who are Africans, and those who are not Africans, non-Africans, particularly white people, right? And how we were being treated differently, right, because of the color of our skin. I was raised in the era of Jim Crow, right, where I had to sit in the back of the bus. And there are examples or experiences that I've had as a result of my trying to sit in the front of the bus and be told I could not do so. So that also led to me to understand that there are unequal way that the law is being applied, particularly as it applies to black people. And so when we look at it in terms of historically, we know that we evolved from out of chattel slavery, and then after the 13th Amendment, the Black Codes, then after the Black Codes, Jim Crow, and now today we are confronted with the conditions of what we call mass incarceration and other forms of second-class citizenship that they continue to hold black people in, right? These kind of de facto conditions, right? They're not necessarily with the law or based upon the ESPO factor of the law, but they're de facto methods by which they keep black people in conditions of, for the most part, impoverished conditions. And so we are fighting for, as I also grew, become a member of Black Panther Party, right? And then I was recruited into the Black Underground, Black Liberation Army, and spent 49 years in prison as a result of my activities engaged in Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army,
even while in prison, I continued to organize, right? And so I was in prison when I first put the proposal out for the International Tribunal, right? Calling the international jurors to come to the United States and investigate the existence of political prisoners for the second time at our conditions, because many of our political prisoners were dying in prison, right? They become elders in prison and were dying. And we had to figure out new ways and new methods in which we can fight for their freedom, fight for their release. And so we called the international jurors to come in. And on October 25th, 2021, the international jurors had an international tribunal at Malcolm X Better Shabazz Memorial Center, Educational Memorial Center in Harlem. And as a result of the 30 witnesses that they deposed and gobs of documents that they were able to review, they conclude that the United States is in fact guilty of genocides against black, brown, and indigenous people. The issues of mass incarceration, the issues of medical health issues, the issues of environmental conditions, the issues of police killing of black people, and what was that?
Political prisoners.
And of course, the issue of political prisoners, right? They found guilty of genocide, engaging in genocide in each of those particular areas. It has been a very, very heartwarming decision, in as much as that we were able to accomplish what Paul Robeson, W.D. Du Bois, and William Patterson attempted to do December 17th, 1951, about 2 months after I was born. I was born in October of that year. And so for me, to uphold that legacy, to be able to contribute to that legacy is extremely important, satisfying, you might say, right? And have the kind of comrades like Jihad Abdul Muhammad, like Matt Myers, like Tag Harmon, and Kevin, and many others who supported this dynamic campaign. We are grateful for the sacrifices, leading from all the way from Harriet Tubman, all the way from Frederick Douglass, all the way from Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosser, and the many others who sacrificed their lives to improve the conditions of black people, to end slavery in America, which has not yet to be ended completely. And so we continue to struggle, continue to fight. What's the next question?
The next question, so continuing to struggle, continuing to fight, one of the crucial formations in terms of that ongoing legacy of resistance is, of course, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense.
Sure.
And so if you could please just break down for us what some of that was like, especially as a youth, you know, coming through as a teen. You were already engaged with the community, as was your family. But could you just give a little bit of what that experience was like as a youth going into a revolutionary formation like that, that was really striking crucial blows against this genocidal structure?
Yes. One thing that's very, very important for people to understand, that the Black Panther Party was a youth movement, right? There was no one initially involved in the Black Panther Party was over the age of 30, or 30 years or younger, right? That means people was in their teens and their 20s who was engaged in this struggle. And at the height, we had about 5,000 members of the Black Panther Party across the country. I think there was 26 or 36 chapters across the country, in cities across the country. At the height, they had a distribution of paper of 250,000 issues of the Black Panther Party newspaper, which of course, once it handed from hand to hand, it probably reached about 1 million people, right, on a monthly basis, right, educating the community on the conditions that we felt had to be changed, right, changed institutionally, changed substantially, in terms of how we are living in the United States. So the Black Panther Party was able to, as an example, put forth free breakfast programs, free health clinics in our community, transportation of family members to see their loved ones inside prisons. They dealt with the issues of housing in our community. And of course, they dealt with the questions of police brutality and murder of our people, right? one thing that also is important to understand about the Black Panther Party, that they're the first one to create the conditions for sickle cell anemia investigation and research. It didn't exist until the Black Panther Party, right? Now there's a whole medical system, right? And doing the work for the issues of sickle cell anemia that began with the Black Panther Party. So inasmuch as the Black Panther Party resisted our people from being murdered by racist police across the country, it also created conditions from which we tried to improve the livelihood, the means from which we were surviving in a system of white supremacy. That is basically the greatest legacy of the Black Panther Party, outside of them also building what we call the Black Liberation Army, right? Rule number 6 of the Black Panther Party stated that no Black Panther Party member can join any other underground organization except for the Black Liberation Army. That's rule number 6. That means that when Bobby Seals and Huey Newton conceived the idea of Black Panther Party, they knew at some point in time that we'd have to engage in armed struggle, right? And so they set that criteria, they set that standard within the Black Panther Party. And so for many of us, particularly after the riots of the 60s and the early 70s, we were recruited into what was called the Black Underground, which was evolved into the Black Liberation Army. And we did, in fact, retaliate against police murders of our people, right? We felt that if somebody's gonna bleed, then everybody's gonna bleed, right? Somebody's gonna die, then everybody's gonna die, right? Somebody's gonna have harm and feel pain and anguish, right? And not only be the mothers and the daughters and the fathers and the sisters and brothers of Black people, right? That this pain is gonna be shared, right? And so we engaged in struggle and basically trying to preserve our people and issues involved regarding our people. Now let's keep this in point, especially clear. That form of resistance is not new for us in our struggle in the United States, right? There are hundreds of slave rebellions during the times of chattel slavery that is not recorded. Now we talk about Denmark Vesey, we talk about Nat Turner, we talk about Gabriel Prosser, but there are many more that we don't have information of, or it's not being recorded in history, not actually being taught, right? But then there's also the African Blood Brotherhood, right? Who are armed Black communists who fought against the Klan, right? There's also the Deacon for Defense, right? Who are armed ministers and pastors who protected the Civil Rights Movement, right? We had Robert Williams, who wrote the first book, who fought against the Ku Klux Klan as an NAACP leader, right? And wrote the book, Negroes with Guns, and telling us that we need to arm ourselves in order to protect ourselves, right? And so for us in the Black Panther Party, we adhere to that legacy of resistance, the legacy of struggle, right? And we evolved what we call the Black Liberation Army. And that is the historical foundation where the Black Liberation Army come from. I remember listening to an interview from one of my comrades, Timothy Blood McQuarrie, right? And one of the things that he emphasized, that Black Liberation Army has been in existence since the time of Armistead, right? When the captive slave resisted being brought here to the United States, right? Many of us have seen the movie Armistead. That's Black resistance, right, to slavery. And so Black Liberation Army represents that Black resistance in its totality.
Keep it with the BLA for a second, you mentioned that strong interview, also rest in power to Blood McQuarrie, and we would really like to continue to just shed light on what that is actually like, so that we don't have a distorted view based off how the corporate dependent media has consistently attacked the BLA, what actually occurred, that legacy, the individuals who engaged in struggle in that way. But just to go back to some of what you were saying in terms of the survival programs from the BPP, we know that the US government, by and large, just bid off of those programs whole cloth and basically attempted to claim them for their own, like the Patients' Bill of Rights, for example. You mentioned the free breakfast programs. And now here we are in 2022, we have the US government talking about ending that free breakfast program in a place where now heads have more precarity perhaps than ever in terms of food insecurity, especially in our areas. You know, so this just continues to speak to the genocide that you've been raising and that the tribunal proved without a shadow of a doubt. But if we could just continue a bit further on the BLA, what are some misconceptions that you're able to set right in terms of the BLA and its activities?
Well, one of the things is that they called us cop killers and terrorists, right? That's far from the truth. Yes, there were some police officers that were exterminated, right? As a result of the kind of brutality and murder of black people that we felt was necessary to retaliate against, to inform them that we weren't going to be the only ones who's going to be bleeding or dying. But that necessarily means that this is what our goals and objectives were. Our goals and objectives of Black Panther Party was to defend the black community and defend the Black Panther Party, right, and the various associated revolutionary organizations at that time. That was the purpose. Remember, the Black Panther Party's original name was Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. And so the Black Liberation Army operated in that capacity to defend the community and to defend our movement. No, we were not terrorists. No, we were not just fighting against white folks, right? Anti-racism, right? Our concern was the institution of policing. Keep in mind, the policing came out of the slave patrols, right? This is where the history of policing comes from in this country. It also has a legacy, right? A legacy of repression, a legacy of oppression, a legacy of murder and killing black people. And so for us, we have to counter that legacy. And so the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army was the tools for that purpose, to counter that, right, and to defend our community. There's some areas of concerns in terms of how they portray us, as a question of terrorism, right? We never terrorized the people, so who are we terrorizing, right? Who are we terrorists of, right? Contrary to police departments on these SWAT calls that they have, killing innocent people like Breonna Taylor, right, in her bed, right? Or killing Castile, right, driving his car with his kids, right? Killing young people. For instance, just the other day when they killed this young man, shot him 60 times. What is that? That's terror. I don't care which way you look at it, right? That's giving you a message, telling you a message in your community that we will murder you, right? We will not only murder you, we will overkill, right? In terms of killing you, right? 60 times, shooting at him 100 times, 100 bullets, 60 of them hitting. What? That's a message to all of our people, right? That's terror, okay? Psychological terror as well as physical terror. So no, we weren't the terrorists, and we've never been the terrorists. We've been the counter-terrorists, if anything, right? To counter the terrorism of state repression, state violence against our people.
Absolutely. And in terms of that slave patroller legacy that you mentioned, the plantation reality of these dungeons throughout the U.S., we know that you and your comrades on the inside were very early to not only identify, but to take real measures toward attacking that, exposing that reality of enslavement, of prison slavery, penal slavery. This was in 79, if I'm not mistaken.
It's true.
So if you could you just share a bit about what that process was like, you and your comrades drafting this memorandum of law, citing the human rights violations, the international law violations of penal slavery, as well as what you think the abolitionist movement today, which has seen a tremendous resurgence, it's perhaps safe to say. What do you think that the abolitionist movement today and beyond really needs to hone in on from your long-standing experience engaging that specific set of questions?
Sure. Yeah, back in 1979, I organized the first U.S. prisoners petition to the United Nations. Actually, it started in 1977. and culminated basically in 1979 with a broader demonstration. At the first time we had the international jurists come to the United States, it was in 1981 as a result of this campaign, of that campaign. One of the things I also did was part of the campaign. At that time, Andrew Young, who was a civil rights organizer and worked with Dr. Martin Luther King, had become a ambassador to the United Nations under the presidency of Jimmy Carter. And I had the opportunity while I was in prison to have someone ask him, a journalist ask him a question. And the question was asked to Andrew Young, UN ambassador, did political prisons exist in the United States? And he answered in the affirmative, perhaps thousands, right? And he was skewed by the media and called on the carpet, President Carter's Oval Office and told him to shut that down, right? Well, the reality is that there was, in fact, political prisons and continue to be political prisons in the United States. And so as the first U.S. prisons petition campaign to the United Nations, it culminated in that fact being realized, that political prisons in the United States, based upon the statement by Andrew Young. Inasmuch as we prompted that, we created the condition, the environment for that to happen, it was Andrew Young who actually made that statement, that made the papers. And so for us, that was an important accomplishment, right? To create the reality, to create that conditions for which Andrew Young can be put in a position where he has to make a truthful statement. Now, in continuing that, we also know that 2009, 2010, I don't know if it was that long ago, that Michelle Alexander brought out the book called Mass Incarceration, right? And 2010, right?
New Jim Crow, right?
The New Jim Crow, right? Mass Incarceration. And that again heightened the idea that I had fought for, was arguing for back in 1979, right? So it raised the issue again, right? Where it cannot be denied, cannot be cast over, cannot be obscured, right? And I understand what's going on in the United States and the continuing of slavery here in the United States based upon the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution. And so mass incarceration, as we all know, targeting what community? Black, brown, indigenous people, right? And as a result of that, it's due to the systemic racism in the United States that essentially keeps black people, people of color, in impoverished conditions, like redlining and other forms of preventing generational wealth growth in our communities, all right? And because they always need to have a manual and menial labor, a labor force for menial and manual labor. And so therefore they try to ensure that in terms of population control, right, and black, brown, indigenous people, they use this idea of criminalizing, right, laws that had not been criminalized before, right? For instance, like the Black Codes, as an example. The Black Codes is a way for which to criminalize vagrancy, right? If you're homeless and houseless, right, you become a vagrant, right? They can put you in prison for that, right? If you don't have a job, right, or working somewhere, they can put you in prison for that, okay? And so that was the nature of the Black Codes for the most part, to create an alternative to the system of chattel slavery that was ended in 1865, right? And so with that, they came up with the law. So that the law, for instance, the 13th Amendment, right, it prevented people from having personal ownership of other people, right, as property. But it did not prevent the state from owning people as property, right? There is a case called Ruffin versus Commonwealth that states emphatically that prisoners are slaves of the state. That law is still in the books. Just as 13th Amendment, the exception clause is still in the book. And so what that informs us that slavery has not been totally abolished in the United States. It continues, even against Declaration of Human Rights, even against the crime of genocide, even against international labor law, for compulsory labor, right? Those conditions, those violations still exist in the United States, and we're fighting for that today. And that's why the International Tribunal was important. That's why this decision by the international jurors was important to find the United States guilty of the charges, of those charges. So when we look at we look at a line of resistance, right, that continues across the country. I'm across the history of this country, right? I'm grateful to my mom, right, who told me that I'm African, right, who was also a member of NAACP, who took me on marches as a young child, right, who gave me that fire in the belly, right, and the love for our people, that we were willing to put up for that kind of sacrifice, as did many of our comrades who was a part of the Black Panther Party and Black Liberation Army.
So you've been a part of a number of these tribunals, as you spoke to most recently in October of last year, where the U.S. was found guilty of 5 counts of genocide.
Right.
Now, the next major phase of Spirit of Mandela campaign is what is called the People's Senate.
Yes.
And so here at About the People, as the name says, you know, we're about the people. We want to bring it directly to those that are on the ground, build with people. So it seems only right. We're talking about the People's Senate. Could you please break down for us and let heads know how they can connect, why they should connect with the People's Senate moving forward?
Right. Thank you for that question. It's important to understand that now that the United States has been found guilty of genocides against Black, brown, indigenous people, and the system in and of itself is not going to charge itself. They have on the books, in the law, 18 U.S.C. 1091, right, which is the United States law on the issues of genocide, for which they are treaty to the International Convention of Genocide, the 1948 International Convention of Genocide. There's a treaty to that. But the United States will not charge itself with engaging in the practice of genocide. So what we have to decide is that it's time for us as a people to decide how we're going to govern ourselves. Because we cannot continue to be governed by a system that imposes conditions of genocide against us. We cannot, right? Mosquitoes. We cannot. And so we've decided there's necessity to develop an alternative systems of governing. And so we're calling for the building of what we call the People's Senate. The People's Senate, what is that? People's Senate is people finding the means to organize themselves to govern themselves, right? And so in each state that we want to have assemblies, people's assemblies, where they'll elect a person or persons who will function as a representative of those assemblies. And we'll bring those assemblies and bring those senators, those representatives together and begin to fight for our own liberation and independence of this system of white supremacy and capitalist imperialism, right? Our goal and objective is to create a new way of governing for the people and by the people, and not by the corporations for the corporations, which people are then become slave laborers of corporations, which has been the foundation of this capitalist imperialist social order. And so, yes, we are building what we call the People's Senate. We're asking everyone to join us in this determination. They can go to spiritofmandela.org, or they can go to International Tribunal 2021.com, right? International Tribunal 2021.com, and learn more about how to engage and be involved with the People's Senate, building the People's Senate, alternative to a system of oppression and genocides. I want to say three things only for this great event, this historic transformation from the civil rights movement to a human rights movement. Three things: all power to the people, all power to the people, all power to the people, all power to the people.
What's up with the next installment of ATP? We build with our comrades of Love Not Fear out in Philly, underground journalist and captive freedom fighter Mumia Abu Jamal, and much more from on the ground across these genocidal states. Our content will always reflect the times from our perspective as a people because we are about the people. Please follow us on Instagram and on Twitter and TikTok at ATP About the People. What's the call? Free them all. Free the land.